So everything you thought you knew about Batman, throw it out the window, because this version right here, a version that hails from a universe created by Darkseid himself, shakes up the Batman lore to its very core. And the first clear-cut example we see of this is Alfred, as in this universe here, he is in no way, shape, or form related to Bruce Wayne Batman. Instead, he is a full-on spy/mercenary, not a butler, and as being an older man, as he finally arrives back to Gotham after many years, he comes in for a mission, but notices how the entire city seems to have changed. Arriving at his safe house with all of his weapons, he then gets updated about what his mission is. You see, he is here to take on and get intel on the Party Animals, which is a new gang in Gotham, and we will find out later, even spans the entire world. This is a worldwide, almost cult going around and is targeting Gotham pretty heavily, because ever since the Party Animals came up on the scene, the murder rate has been up by 700%. Even children and kids aren't safe, as a daycare was torched yesterday while they danced outside. 32 people burned. Which this just goes to show you that there is no sympathy for these new villains. They are evil through and through. But while Alfred is getting updated on the current workings of Gotham, he is also informed about this new vigilante. And we finally get our first glimpse of this new Batman. But it is only a glimpse, because even the other police and other intelligence don't even know who or what this mysterious figure is. And as Alfred finally finishes up getting all of his intel, he then heads back out to go to his bike that he came here on, only to find that it was stolen. So you really can't just have anything in Gotham, no matter how small it is. But towards the end, this stolen bike moment wraps around full circle and really puts into perspective something about this new Batman, which after a second reread becomes really cool. And after getting his first glimpse of this Batman, we move over to a fighting gym and finally see our first glimpse of Bruce Wayne, as you see a man hitting the bags pretty relentlessly. And in any other universe, any other case, this would be it. This would be our Bruce Wayne, but not in this case, as this is the absolute universe, and this Bruce Wayne needs to be absolute in every aspect, including absolutely huge, as we cut over and see the real Bruce Wayne, a 6'6", 250-pound beast of a man. And while we see Bruce Wayne, who in this universe is still pretty young, only being 23 I believe, but as he starts to train and hit the heavy bag, he even starts thinking back, having flashbacks. Flashbacks about a certain point in time with him being with his father at a zoo trip, in which we find out no, his father wasn't some sort of billionaire businessman. Instead here, he's just an English teacher. But of course, anything involving a child Bruce Wayne and his parents never ends well, as something happens during the flashback which absolutely enrages Bruce, causing him in the present moment to lash out, splitting the heavy punching bag in two, off of pure strength alone. And as we see the owner of the gym, Waylon Jones, who in main DC canon is the Killer Croc, we see him talk to Bruce Wayne, obviously not thrilled about more of his equipment being broken. We also find out that Waylon is a childhood friend of his, because of course this version of Bruce Wayne isn't some sort of billionaire orphan. No, he was a normal working class man, growing up normally with everybody else in Gotham. And because of this, we see his friend circle consists of a few names you might recognize: Edward Nygma, or the Riddler, Harley Quinn, obviously being Harley Quinn, Cobblepot Oz being the Penguin, and Selina Kyle being the Catwoman, all who, at least in this universe, were childhood friends of Bruce Wayne. But it seems like Bruce Wayne is a little distant from this friend group and people, as because he being who he is, in his certain morals and discipline, and everyone else growing up in Gotham, they are definitely not normal, law-abiding citizens. And Bruce Wayne for now has a very specific mission and goal in mind. He wants betterment for his city, for Gotham. So he spends every waking moment training, getting better, furthering his mission instead of hanging with his friend group who themselves aren't the best of people in the first place. Across the city on a yacht though, we see some of the actual current villains and problems plaguing current Gotham. And we actually get a little bit of detail about these party animals and specifically on their leader, who is the Black Mask, sporting a completely new redesign with a giant inflating almost bowling ball head. He is almost completely different than previous incarnations of the Black Mask. But also on this yacht, we do see some of the previous notorious crime bosses of Gotham, Mr. Falcone and Mr. Marani, as they're having this meeting with Black Mask, going on to say that these party animals, they have no respect for the rules of Gotham. They can't just walk in here and do whatever they want, killing whoever they please. That even though Gotham is almost this perpetual chaotic place, the underworld and crime family still had some level of order going on. And so with these mob bosses pressing this new Black Mask about this, Black Mask then goes on to share some details, because rumors have it that this Black Mask in this universe is some sort of big shot. He has men all over the world, different animal subsections, goat people here, giraffe men there, and they're all connected to some sort of global cult, with Black Mask being the leader or some sort of high-ranking member. And as he goes on to further intimidate and explain to these mob bosses, he then says that he collects masks, but no, not just any face mask, they are death masks, literal carved out faces of his previous victims, from Martin Luther to even George Washington. And surprisingly enough, even some of the family members, a brother and a cousin, to these mob bosses here. And Black Mask goes on to say that he is going to be adding their faces to his collection as he goes on to brutally take them out, just showing you that no one in Gotham is safe, not even the other villains and underground mob bosses themselves. Immediately over the next day though, we then see Jim Gordon, who is currently mayor of Gotham, leading a meeting as he tries to discuss this animal party problem. Because this issue is so widespread and violent, they might even lose the city if the mayor and police can't do anything to stop them. And ironically, just then when they were having this press meeting over the party animals, we see the party animals themselves barge in, crash his party specifically looking to kill Jim Gordon and everybody present. As they start to shoot in and fire in the building, hitting and actually wounding Jim Gordon. But before they can actually finish a job or do any more permanent damage to anyone else there, we then see the party animals here get snatched back out because something or someone intervened, slamming them back on the outside of the courthouse while Alfred is up at a vantage point just watching, as he has strict orders not to intervene and only gather intel. But no, it wasn't just those 3 party animals, there was an entire army outside. And of course, the person that intervened was none other than Bruce Wayne, the Batman, the absolute Batman himself, as he goes on to tell one of the policewomen there that whatever you hear, do not open the door, because on the outside, things are about to get very violent and very fast. As Batman, like an actual bat, cocooned in his own wings, which here are completely bulletproof and resistant, as all the party animal members start to fire on him, but realizing that it doesn't do a thing and is ineffective, because Batman completely withstands their gunfire, and afterwards just simply dropping a smoke bomb and hopping down, looking absolutely beefy and thick, getting ready to bash some heads and cause some pain. Because as you will soon see and find out, the way this Batman fights is way more brutally, more violent, and almost moves like a force of nature. Even though he is 6'6" and 250 pounds, he is moving like a graced, agile dancer. And the way he is fighting with his cape, it is almost like a symbiote from Marvel, using it to whip and grab people, tossing them aside like they weighed nothing. And as I said before, Alfred is scoping this entire situation, watching from a distance as Batman becomes a one-man army taking on this entire group of party animals. As he goes on to narrate and say, whoever you are, you've got flair. But let's see what you can really do. You're fast, steady, and above all, focused. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? You're trained, mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but you're a striker above all, brutal yet precise. You're sending a message, but you're enjoying it too. As you see Batman literally pull out his horns from his cowl, using it as makeshift batarangs and knives, stabbing and maiming people. But Alfred even goes on to comment on this, saying, so bloody, yet you miss each artery by just enough. No fatalities, not at all, not once. Just showing you that even though this Batman is, well, definitely more brutal and more violent, above all, he's still Batman and still has his iconic and almost unshakable no-kill rule. But we might even see this rule be tested as a big guy comes up trying to intimidate Batman, which this guy just seems to be the mini-boss here, going on to say, my hands have killed more people than you can even count. Now I'm going to give you one chance to surrender and get out of our way. But of course Batman, being the bigger and badder guy, says nothing as he pulls out some sort of lightsaber looking weapon from his belt, attaching it to the bat symbol on his chest, making his very own bat axe. So yes, as cool as this is, even though Batman doesn't kill, he isn't above demembering, as when the big guy comes rushing at Batman, Batman literally cuts his hand off in one fell swoop. And with the big guy down, he then turns to everybody else, flipping the script on them, telling them that he's going to give them one chance to get out of his way. As you see a panel of Batman with just pure intimidating aura, nightmare fuel, this absolute almost unstoppable beast of a man completely losing it. Which of course all the rest of the party animals try to make a run for it, seeing how as the big guy got one-shotted and was defeated pretty easily. But as they are running, Alfred up above finally decides to engage, pressing a button and activating the explosives he set around the arena, getting all the fleeing party animals in the blast. And now with them two being the only last players on the field, he finally goes to confront Batman, seemingly able to get the drop on him, as he walks right up to him with a gun, saying this is the sound of a DC-34 automatic shotgun. There are only 3 of these in the world and it can blow your brains out in one shot, before you are even able to blink. But of course Batman, being the agile tank that he is faster, blitzing Alfred, kicking him in the chest and taking the gun, leaving Alfred alone and to think about what even just happened here. But as you will soon find out, this Alfred is very, very resourceful, as over the next coming days and weeks, he goes on to fully break down, search, and find out who exactly this Batman is. Immediately finding out that Batman is really Bruce Wayne, because as he goes on to say, he hides his tracks very well, but it's easy to do when you're no one, just some guy, 24 years old. His mother is a social worker and his dad a teacher. He grew up in Crime Alley, but he's smart. He excels in school, near genius level test scores, even winning a engineering contest just in 5th grade, winning him and his class a field trip to the Gotham Zoo, a place where it all started. As if you remember from earlier, we've seen the flashback with him and his father at the zoo. This is the start and where the creation of Batman came from. As there seemed to be some sort of psychotic man shooting at the zoo, Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father, goes to make sure all the children are safe. But in the process of making sure all the kids were safe, he goes on to face the shooter himself and is inadvertently killed in a crossfire, with Alfred even continuing to further break down his life, saying after that he lost himself for a while. He was rageful and lashed out on the world. But after some time, he then found himself again. Something inspired him, so he started to straighten out. He went back to school, got a scholarship at the best university, started to play football, but during the first week he injured himself, seemingly on purpose, faking an injury because Bruce is saving his body, saving it for all of this, whatever it is he has built, as he has studied and mastered applied mechanics, chemistry, psychology, military theory, and everything in between. He was preparing, and then after all of that, he finally came home. He set up his operation in Gotham. He has really built something here, and Alfred even goes on to say it's pretty impressive what he is able to do. But he is also taking down men just like him before, in cities, jungles, deserts, all over the world, because at the end of the day, he is a crusader, and crusaders like him always have a weakness. And in this case, it is literally Bruce's mother. As we find out, she is still alive in this universe, which in and of itself is a crazy revelation because it's like Superman. Instead of being the last son of Krypton, his planet is still intact and he is one of billions of other Kryptonians, completely changing what it means to be Superman. And in this case, this younger Bruce Wayne still has his mother, which is just another detail that separates him from the normal and iconic Batman of being a billionaire orphan. But as Pennyworth is literally sitting here with a gun, seeing Bruce Wayne lacking, he goes on to say, "I could kill you right here. In front of her. It would be easy. It's what I should do. But at the end of the day, you're just a kid." But this doesn't mean he is going to stop coming after Bruce Wayne, this Batman. Instead, he's going to do it on different terms. As you cut over to later that evening, as you see Batman in a tower high above the clouds in his makeshift hideout, going on to analyze this party animal threat and even some of the skull masks that he gathered from the giant battle before, he is then interrupted by the arrival of Alfred, as Alfred has successfully tracked him down here, going on to say pretty smart, hiding out in the top of these buildings. All of the top floors are owned out by companies who never use them, just hollow investments. But I am closing you down now. And then we see Batman finally confront Alfred, but this absolute Batman here is using his shotgun from earlier, which, as Alfred has said before, is very deadly. But it seems Alfred is trying to call out his bluff, telling him to put the gun down, give it back to him, how the Batman is no killer. Unfortunately for Alfred though, it seems he has made a wrong judgment call as Batman fires the weapon, hitting Alfred point blank in the head, as immediately after he shot the weapon, he then tries to make his escape. And a few things happen very fast. First, Alfred realizes that Batman modified his prized shotgun to be non-lethal. Second, he hears the gun clatter on the floor as Batman tells him to keep it. And thirdly, he hears the roar of his own motorcycle, his own bike, the one he lost at the beginning that Batman stole. As this absolute Batman goes on to tell Alfred that he's not the only one who follows people, bringing this entire thing full circle. Meaning, since the beginning, Batman has been keeping tabs on Alfred ever since he arrived in Gotham. So you might have thought Alfred has been one step ahead of Batman, tracking him, getting all this information, when it was actually the opposite. Batman has known all along who Alfred was, what he was doing, how he got here, what was his plan, and was the one who was one step ahead of him. As taking the motorcycle, he crashes through the building's windows, using his giant cape to glide down, as Batman makes his escape to defend Gotham another day. Moving over though, we actually get a little bit of an epilogue. As Alfred is now healing up from the attack, he even gets word of one of his old targets, one that Alfred has had difficulty tracking and pinning down. And this old target of his has been all over the world, even training with the League of Assassins before killing them, and now currently is in the wind. And as we see, this mysterious man has a name, Jack Arthur, currently one of the 30 richest people on the planet. And one thing to know about this Mr. Arthur is that you shouldn't joke around him. Why? Because there are rumors that this guy never laughs, not once or ever. That's why he has a nickname, the Joker. So yes, it seems like this universe's Joker is very, very different from the normal Prime Universe version, as he is almost given the role of pre-Batman Bruce Wayne, billionaire man traveling the world, studying from people getting better, but instead he is still the same psychotic killer that he normally is. where we seen Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne, sacrifice himself to save his class of children, because in this universe he is a teacher and not some billionaire businessman, but he saved his class of students from a gunman when they were on a field trip to the Gotham Zoo. And during this incredibly tragic event, we seen child Bruce trapped within a bat enclosure. And here we see this young Bruce at his lowest point. A pivotal moment. And in this instance, seeing the multiple and swarm of bats, the sight of this, the sight and fear of this forever ingrained inside of Bruce's mind and forever changing his life's trajectory. And we cut back over to present day and see the ramifications of this, as because, well, he is Batman now, fighting against a small army of the party animals. A new gang in Gotham, completely terrorizing and just causing chaos. And while he is at this Gotham Aquarium absolutely wrecking house, Alfred, in this universe who isn't connected to Batman in any way, and is basically a secret spy here, he is watching from the shadows and narrates, saying over the next 2 weeks the party animals escalate their offenses on Gotham, and in return, Batman escalates his offense on them. He isn't everywhere, but he seems to know where their biggest attacks will be, like right here at the Aquarium. And the reason why Alfred is even here kind of helping Batman, as he goes on to say, he's doing his part in trying to help him by adding surveillance protections. Because the more Batman disrupts, the more the party animals steps up their battle and the more data he can collect for his agency who hired him to come to Gotham to collect data on the party animals in the first place. But now with the party animals upping their escalation, they now have enough members to take on a small militia. And we see evidence of this with Batman seemingly being cornered here, as because even though he is defeating a bunch of them, he is taking some damage. But the thing about this absolute Batman, which I just love, and even sets him above the absolute Wonder Woman, the absolute Superman, he is way more of a tank. Just an unstoppable force of nature. Multiple times through this comic and throughout the first issue too, we see no matter what comes his way, he literally shrugs it off. Any physical bout is no problem for this Batman, as we see knives literally in his back and ninja stars in his helmet. But no, this Batman isn't just a physical monster, he is also every bit intelligent as a Batman normally would be, especially in a battle, as he knows when to advance forward and when to retreat and regroup. And even in situations where it seems like he is being overwhelmed, he is still very, very much in control. As after being pushed back and breaking the aquarium open, having water rush everywhere, Batman jumps up using his cape to cling to the ceiling. Because as Alfred goes on to say, he plans everything, uses everything. A fighter who knows the terrain takes advantage. Because while he is up there and all the rest of the party animals are down there, Batman uses his very strategic position to pull out some gadgets and drops a ball of chemically concentrated vinegar, which turns the salt water into acid, literally the definition of working smarter and not harder, taking out all the party animals present in one clever attack. Because as the party animals come out rushing with chemical burns, Alfred still watches from the shadows, all while Batman, seeing this as a victory, makes his retreat as well. Because he has stashed this all over the city, but not many caves as a Batman normally would. And with Alfred also not only keeping tabs on Batman, but gathering information on him and everyone else in Gotham, he sees with all of his stash houses around the city, it marks the form of a bat, just like the one on his chest. Meaning even down to this random detail that almost no one will find out, he is certainly committed to the bit. But Alfred in this case doesn't just know that he is Batman, he also knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, keeping tabs on his civilian life as well. Which is interesting in this case because Batman isn't a billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, whatever else he might be. He is just a normal person. So really his identity as Bruce Wayne isn't as important as it normally would. No, he's more Batman than he ever would be, because he doesn't need to live up this billionaire facade. He is not a public figure. He is just your every average day Joe, and by day he works as an engineer. But Alfred goes on to note, saying when he is not the Bat, his routine is very tight. He goes to work, then vanishes into the shadows, and there's a rumor that he meets with the Red Hood, who in this universe isn't a specific person, Jason Todd, but no, it is a resistance group. Now it isn't explicitly clear what this group is resistance of. It could be against the party animals, or it could even be against Gotham itself as the government, but I'd assume it's nothing bad because Bruce is seemingly a part of it. Maybe it is even a whole team of vigilantes as well. But in the end, Alfred notes how Batman is a man alone, even steering clear of his own mother, who is still alive in this universe. And in the 3 weeks that Alfred has watched in surveillance over Bruce, he has only broke his routine one time, to make one stop at Blackgate Penitentiary to visit Joe Chill, his father's killer. Now, of course, it isn't known what he says to him or what that interaction goes on to be. It instead leaves it up to interpretation, which I think is really interesting because at this point, Bruce is only, 22, 23, early 20s? So he doesn't have that same refinement that a little bit older Bruce might have, Batman might have. And especially seeing his father's killer here, intangible in the flesh, maybe one day this absolute Batman might be pushed far enough to take revenge. But that is not the case here. Moving on though, we see Alfred's employers tell him that he has to stop protecting the Batman, saying that he's become too volatile of a factor, and Alfred even considering telling them off, saying no, that Batman is helping him in gathering his data, but he doesn't go this way and instead removes the protections. Soon after this though, the party animals find the high-rise that Batman uses as one of his locations. As a group of them rushes up to try and take on Batman, Bruce Wayne put an end to him. But again, like always, Batman is one step ahead. No, he is 10 steps ahead, as suddenly the entire high-rise goes up in smoke, explodes in a controlled demolition. Because the entire building doesn't come down, no, it was destroyed and detonated in a very specific way. Because this is what Batman wants. Previously, before he was getting his bearings, getting his foot in the door as Batman, as his vigilante, as protecting Gotham, but now he is pushing past that, he's putting both feet forward and fully letting himself be known. Because as we see the building goes up in smokes, it leaves an impression of Batman's face, his cowl, his mask, on the building itself, for the entire city to see. And man, this panel is just so dope. Like, if someone were to say, what's absolute Batman like, this one panel explains it right here. Everything Batman is times 2. But putting the Batman stuff on the back end for a second, we pick over with Gordon, as recently the party animals attempted to assassinate him and take him out. So he is at the hospital, as we learn a couple interesting things. First, we find out that the police are trying to, well, double their efforts to try and track and bring Batman in instead of the party animals. Now, of course, you think they will put more attention on the literal gang causing citywide havoc instead of one guy, but of course that's Gotham police for you. You know, they've always went after Batman, and here is no exception. The second thing, we actually see Martha Wayne, Bruce's mother, arrive here and talk to everybody, because in this universe, Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne actually have a little bit of a history. They've known each other for some years. Thomas Wayne, Martha Wayne, and Jim Gordon, or Mayor Gordon I should say, had a previous standing relationship, which usually isn't a thing because, well, the Waynes are dead, but here this can go a plethora of different ways now that they're alive and what this could mean. But as everyone else clears out, we see Martha and Jim reconnect almost, with Martha going on to say, I miss him, Thomas Wayne. And it's funny because I think he would have actually liked Batman. And with Jim Gordon reminiscing about Thomas, we see something very interesting, how he goes on to say he still thinks about it every day. When he found Bruce at that day of the murder, found him surrounded in a pile of bats. He didn't even see him at first, didn't even know he was there, until he screamed. That scream still sticks with him to this day. And it seems like that day changed the lives of multiple people. Obviously Thomas Wayne being, taken out that day, Bruce forever changing, and also the lives of Martha and Jim too. Because as Martha Wayne, his mother, goes on to say, before that day, Bruce was my little boy. He told me everything. His whole inner life was mine to know. But now, I barely know him at all. Because Bruce Wayne is so committed to this Batman act now that he pushes away, for better or for worse, everyone else, including his own alive mother. And this thing with him being closed off and reserved now, he never really grew out of it. Ever since that day, this is kind of the new Bruce as he is now. Because even in a flashback when he was a child, sitting inside instead of going out with his friends, even telling his mom off, saying he just wants to be left alone, even seemingly going on to feel a little bit of guilt over the entire situation and him being at fault for what happened with his father, because he was the one that won the science fair and suggested they go to the Gotham Zoo as prize, as a field trip. And so even years later, Bruce still carries all that with him, completely closed off and reserved, even when he puts on an act to try to not be. And speaking of his friends, we see Bruce go to a little poker game hosted by some of his lifelong friends. And here, this entire interaction is very interesting, because we see this mastermind, Bruce Wayne, at work. You see, he isn't here just to have fun, play little rounds, no. He is still on his mission, using his connection with his friends here, even if they don't know it, to get more information and draw out, so he can continue to be the Batman to the best of his abilities. Because his little friend circle here, well, they're not the best people. They consist of some of his most iconic villains, the Riddler, the Penguin, Killer Croc, except in this universe, they are not at that point yet, and are still relatively enough normal civilians. And the only person who was in this friend group who isn't present now is Selina Kyle, the Catwoman, but she herself is a different case. And up until now, we haven't seen any mention of her. But for now, we see Bruce Wayne sit down and start to play their little game. And while they're in the middle of playing, Batman literally just brings out one of the party animal skull mask heads, puts it on the table, saying that he is part of the repair crew in Gotham, of course not giving away that he is Batman and he got it from one of his battles, because one, he uses it as a bargaining chip in the poker game they're playing, but also he knows that some of his friends there are some very intelligent people, meaning he's leveraging his connections almost, not even in a friendly way, but to see what he can get and further his goals as Batman. But of course, some of the people want no part in this, such as Killer Croc, whereas others like the Riddler find this very interesting. Because as Bruce goes on to say, these masks might be what they need to figure out where the party animals are striking next. There are special chips inside of the mask that hold a geographical information system, meaning if one knew how to decode it, one could possibly get a ping on where they might show up next. And even some of his other friends, such as the Penguin, Cobblepot, it seems he is involved in some shady business. as of course being in Gotham, 9 out of 10 people might be as corrupted or have their hands in some shady stuff as the entire city is corrupted. Because as the Penguin goes on to further say, he doesn't think that the party animals are out for anything specifically. They are really just here to wreck the city, spread chaos, and that their leader, who we know is the Black Mask, literally just straight up kills anyone who meets and tries to make a deal with him. Meaning it's less about the political impact or the power of it, or even the money. It really seems the party animals, specifically their leader, is trying to spread chaos and bring Gotham under. And you know who this sounds like? Yeah, the Joker. One of his iconic MOs is literally being chaos incarnate. And interestingly enough, so far in this universe, he has taken the normal Bruce Wayne route. He is a very wealthy individual, traveling the world learning what he can for whatever reasons he may have. And who knows, this Black Mask or the leader of the party animals might even be Joker in disguise. But of course, that is just a theory of mine. Moving over towards the evening, we see Batman back on patrol and on a specific mission, as he is breaking into a government office to look for some answers. Specifically something known as a golden chest, which he was tipped off to. And as he expertly makes his way into the facility and to the device hacking into it, he finds that the golden chest is just a code word for something called Ark, which of course spells out Arkham, as in Arkham Asylum, or whatever in this universe this might be. But unfortunately for Batman, all of this is a big trap. As I've mentioned before, we see the Black Mask, the party animals leader, talking to Batman directly, as he has orchestrated this event to get him in a spot he wants him in. The entire building is surrounded. They have tipped off the entire police department, and also the party animals themselves are surrounding the building. And why? Well, the Black Mask set this up as some sort of test, giving Batman a deal. Everything that he has ever wanted, all the information he might need, and his only task is to just survive. As one of the Black Mask soldiers walks in with a rocket launcher directly aimed at Batman, blowing him up. And oh my goodness, when I tell you this moment is so cool, Batman just stands there, not making any effort to move, tanks the explosion, being the absolute tank that he is, this absolute Batman, and rushes forward just like that, taking the guy out. A physical beast. But knowing that this is now a trap, Batman starts to make his escape, hopping down the elevator shaft all the way to the bottom. And once he gets there, he is in for another surprise as he meets Alfred, who, as you know before, has been tracking him this entire time, keeping an eye on him. But Alfred isn't here looking for a fight. No, he has some information that he wants to pass on to Batman, telling him that the party animals, they're not what they seem, and that he has come to the realization that they can help each other. He just needs a chance to explain himself. But for that, they need to get to a secure location, and with the entire building surrounded and chaos going around, this isn't that. So Alfred goes on to say, we have to get to somewhere safe. I have a car heading out back, unless you have a ride yourself. And as Batman starts to activate some machinery, he says you're standing in it. As he pushes the pedal, and we see the hatch that he dropped down into is connected to his version of the Batmobile. And here it is some sort of giant dump truck, bulldozer, whatever giant machine this is, because a giant absolute Batman needs a giant absolute Batmobile, as he rides off, flipping cars into the chaos to make his escape. But while all this craziness is happening in the present, as moving back over when Bruce was a child, still feeling bad and guilty about what happened with his father, we see him potentially move in with a bad crowd. A crowd in the form of Selina Kyle, a young Catwoman. But for now, we pick up with him in his element. You know, going through Gotham with his giant bat tank, with Alfred in the helm helping him. But what's really interesting in this part at least is because Batman and Alfred in this universe have no type of relationship. They aren't butler and master, no. Alfred didn't help raise Batman in any type of way. If anything, Alfred kind of dislikes Batman. Because as he goes on to say, for 40 years I pride myself on being no one. The vague shape of a man sitting across from you on a train. 40 years of creating a life in the shadows, all to lead up and find myself driving down Broadway on the hood of a giant bat-themed dump truck. And it suddenly occurs to me, I may actually hate the Batman. Because everything that has to do with this absolute Batman is so crazy, so over the top that it's even keeping well. Alfred, who has been a super spy, if you will, for decades on the job, on his toes, unsure what to do next or where this is going. But while they are now together, even if it isn't the best of circumstances, Alfred starts to lay out what his reasoning and plans are for the future, because he has something very specific to tell Batman. He goes on to say, in my field, there are rumors of a man called the Black Mask. He's the leader of a secret paramilitary group that serves some of the most powerful people on the planet. And he believes that Roman Sionis, the leader of the party animals, is the Black Mask. But before he can say more, they are interrupted as more of the party animal forces keep attacking them. Because while this giant Batmobile is big and powerful, it is too big and too slow. But as always, Batman is prepared for this. As after pressing a button in a screech of hydraulics, suddenly the entire thing starts to shake. 600 tons of steel shifting. As the entire thing flattens and compresses, turning the giant monstrosity of a machine from a giant bat dump truck to a more sleeker design, more reminiscent of Christian Bale's Tumblr, which is not only very cool, but we even see this process start to change Alfred's mind. As he goes on to say, the roof almost takes my head off, but all I can think is, I may actually love this Batman. And now with him getting way much faster, Alfred actually has time to continue talking and explaining what he needs to Bruce. As he goes on to say, if what I think is true and Sionis is the Black Mask, then he's too big to fight, too dangerous, he has endless resources. And Batman at this point, being optimistic as so far there's not been a challenge he couldn't solve, he simply says he'll just build bigger. But Alfred sees right through this, telling him that there is no way to build big enough for this, and how Batman's best course of action is to accept the deal that Black Mask, the leader of the party animals, gave him in a previous issue. And Batman obviously takes offense to this, thinking why would he agree to a deal with his enemy? Alfred instead thinking from the bigger picture, saying Batman should meet him in the middle, accept his deal and step down for a little bit, and for Bruce to try to save lives through diplomacy. Because the deal Black Mask gave Batman is essentially just to buy him out, give him a couple $100 million for Batman to either quit or lay low. Because Black Mask serves some of the richest global elitists alive. And so if Batman takes his deal, he can set up Batman to be something real within the city to inflict real change. Because this absolute Batman here has done everything in his power so far, just doing it on his own creativity and wit. He doesn't have the billions that, the normal Bruce Wayne would. And now if you give him those resources, regardless of where they come from, there's no telling how big and how widespread this Batman movement can be. And you might be saying, okay, well, wouldn't Black Mask and party animals just get away with it all? But no, Alfred has thought of that too. They will use the intel and the paper trail that a transaction that big will make to apprehend him down the line, Alfred and the agency he works for. So yes, while it might be a small little setback in the present, eventually they will all win, which all in all does sound like a tempting deal, but one Batman doesn't have time to answer in the present, as now after defeating all of the party animals, the GCPD starts rocketing off, the full entire fleet of officers, as they completely surround Batman in his now giant Batmobile, with them seemingly having nowhere to run. And in a hilarious moment with Alfred seeing that they're cornered, he asks Batman if he has something to get them out of this, and Batman just responds, there's a lever in front of you. And after pulling it, he gets shots out hundreds of feet in the air, as a Batmobile compresses, shuts all of his entrances, and turns into a submarine, and drives off to one of his new hidden hideouts underneath the city, just leaving Alfred to recuperate on his own. But another really interesting thing that this comic and story does is we flip-flop between the past and present, as with all the other issues we've seen the same thing. Here now we move over in the past with Bruce and Selina, because yes, Selina Kyle has been pretty absent in the present day of this absolute Batman story, but we do see glimpses of their relationship in the past when they were children, as they are running on rooftops, just playing around as children, but of course very dangerously, as what child is running and tight-roping off 2-story buildings? And as they are doing this, Selina Kyle goes on to give Bruce some motivation, which I think perfectly fits the situation he's in now. As while walking over a tightrope, she tells Bruce, while yes, he could fall and plummet underneath and possibly even break a leg or two, he's not going to, because he is going to keep his head up, eyes forward, and keep moving. And even as he almost falls towards the end, he has people there out for him to help him back on his feet, to elevate him even further, which you could say exactly happens in this issue. While Batman is seemingly falling at his lowest, he does have certain people that help him back up. Alfred, his mother, even down to the Riddler, Edward and Nygma, who in this universe, they have a pretty interesting relationship. But moving forward, we see Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne eventually make it to a theater in which The Mask of Zorro is playing. And if you're a Batman fan and know what this means, this is the movie traditionally him and his parents see the night they were murdered. This was the movie they were going to see the day of when his father was murdered, which just absolutely confuses a young Bruce Wayne as to why she is bringing him to see this exact movie. But switching back over to the present, we also see an equally confused older Bruce Wayne as he is talking to the Riddler, who, I guess he's not the Riddler at this point, he is still just Edward Nygma, but still we see him introduce Bruce to his very interesting creation. And this robotic creation of his is something he calls Al. Edward is supposedly trying to make it a giant riddle machine, so you ask it any question and he can give you any answer. And currently he has about 4/5 of all human knowledge. So Edward, wanting to test it, he tells Bruce Wayne to go ahead and ask it anything. And so Bruce Wayne promptly asks the robot the most prevalent thing on his mind right now about the party animals, and specifically how do their skulls work. And so with that, the machine actually does comply and answer. And so we get a little bit of a lore dump in how the animal mask that the animal party uses, they have 3 different functions. 1, it completely distorts the wearer's identity from all global or local deciphering means. 2, it's a wallet for the wearer connected to a highly protected private network of cryptocurrency called the Black Coin. And 3, it provides you with knowledge, objectives, and targets for whoever is wearing it to see, with different valuations. Basically saying that the people who wear the mask and participate in these certain activities, it is all essentially a game for them, a sick game with real monetary rewards. Arson, robbery, murder, each has different value in the black coin, the cryptocurrency, and depending on what you do and how far you do it, you get paid in different amounts. We're talking tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of value, so the members who participate can get quite wealthy quite fast. So that just gives the motive to why these people are doing it. But now Bruce Wayne asks, how would someone disrupt this entire network, this entire thing? And here we see the main downfall of this issue, the main opposition, the main thing that brings Bruce Wayne to his lowest. Because the robot goes on to say, the network is just too expansive for anyone to bring down. There is nothing you can really do. Sure, you could try to take out a local server, but the network is satellite based. And there are groups of these masks all over the world, hundreds, maybe thousands of members. There is just simply nothing Bruce can do. And of course, Bruce is not taking no for an answer. He says, there has to be some type of way. And how Al, this artificial intelligence, only has about 4/5 of all human knowledge, meaning he doesn't really know everything, even if he does know a lot. But very interestingly enough, we see the Riddler try to dispel Batman from even just going down this line of thought and planning, telling him just to destroy the mask and forget it. And no, this isn't some elaborate plan from the Riddler to throw Batman off the trail and keep Gotham in the dark, destroyed by these party animals. No, it's a very far simpler explanation. The Riddler just values Batman as a friend, and how he knows anything with the party animals is a real dangerous game, because he goes on to say, knowledge is vision, and me, I see a lot of it. Too much sometimes. It's why friendships hasn't been so easy to find, and why I value yours so much. So this is me looking at you and asking you just to please stop. So we have Alfred, and now even Riddler, his quote-unquote friend, asking him to stop and just essentially walk away from this party animal situation, at least for now. But just at that moment, he gets a phone call from Harvey Dent, who of course, goes on to be Two-Face in the normal DC universe, and it's something I love within its absolute universe, where Bruce Wayne, he is friends with all of his villains in the main DC universe. Now, if that's going to stay that way for long, or if they're going to have some sort of falling out and turn into the villains that we know them as, who knows? But for now, it's interesting to see how this plays out. But Harvey Dent goes on to tell Batman that he has looked into the stuff that he has told him to, and how a lot of the party animal funding comes from a company called JK Holdings. And just keep that company name in mind, because I have a feeling that that is going to become very, very important later on. But for now, we move completely over, hours later, towards the evening, where we pick up with a new cast of characters, with specifically Harvey Bullock, who is currently the police commissioner of Gotham, while Jim Gordon is running for mayor. But he is about to have a very unsettling meeting with the Black Mask himself, as he abords his luxury yacht, which we have previously seen. And as we move over to a lower training deck, we actually see the Black Mask, Roman Sionis, training, fighting against someone who Harvey Bullock actually knows, and who is actually a fan of. And here we see a couple things take place. Firstly, with the actual fight itself, while the Black Mask isn't physically imposing or big or anything, we actually see him hold his own against his giant opponent, which is something I personally love, because when you look at someone like the Joker, he is definitely a foil for Batman and can definitely put him through the ringer, but he never was intended to be this giant brawler like Bane or imposing physical fighter. But that is something that the Black Mask here doesn't share with the Joker. See, while the Black Mask is being hyped up as this giant villain that Batman has to go against, he is also a very, very capable opponent. So much so that if Black Mask were to physically fight against Batman, it would actually be up in the air of who would win, because he takes down this former champion like clockwork, super easily, evading his hits, submitting him without problem, even snapping his arm like it was a twig, all while doing this having a full conversation with Commissioner Bullock. And during this conversation, he calls himself a professional pacifist, basically in his own words, meaning he tries to help bring peace to troubled areas around the world, good places being taken advantage of bad people. And currently with Gotham, his city, it could use some peace these days, which is a very good strategy from the Black Mask. You see, he is playing both sides. No one fully knows his role in all of this business going on in Gotham. He is going to try to get all aspects of the city, including all of GCPD, the police department, under his fingers, in his grasp, as he goes on to say and portray that he is against the party animals, calling them degenerates, utter filth. And of course, with the commissioner agreeing with this, the Black Mask goes on to further say they're growing in numbers between them, and he just goes on to slip Batman in there, like Batman's as bad as the party animals. And what they're doing, he tells the commissioner that they have to get things under control now and fast before it all falls apart. Because all of this chaos going around, new vigilante groups, as in Batman, Alfred, and others popping up, all of this eventually will just lead to war, which is highly ironic that he is preaching this message of being a pacifist and only wanting to bring peace while literally choking a man out on the floor. choking him out as he is tapping for surrenderance, giving up, but the Black Mask doesn't stop, until his eyes literally become bloodshot and Harvey Bullock has to step in, telling him that he has had enough, seemingly actually killing him right in front of the commissioner, taking the man's life as it was nothing more than a slight inconvenience for him, all while having a conversation about peace nonetheless. But cutting back over to where Batman is, we find a little bit more about what Black Mask is planning, especially here in Gotham, and what his true goals are. Because as Alfred feeds him intel, he goes on to explain to Bruce that there are these black sites all across the globe called ARCs, secret unregulated prisons run in conjunction with other governments, and with each of them having a designated letter. Arc A was the first and it was in Santa Prisca. Arc B was in Russia, Arc C in China, and now the biggest one yet just off the coast of Gotham, Arc M, or if you say it fast, Arkham, which really just goes to show Bruce that he's out of his element. Black Mask and his forces, the party animals, are literally building an entire system off the coast of Gotham, his own city under his nose, with Bruce neither having the knowledge nor resources to really do anything to stop this. But cutting back over once again to the past, we see what happens once Bruce got to the theater where Zorro was supposed to be playing, with him obviously wanting to leave, as this just brings him bad memories. This was the movie he was going to see the day, well, his father was tragically murdered. And it's interesting here because Selina almost sees the potential in Bruce, seeing that this tragic event could limit Bruce, cap him from reaching his full potential of what he could become, with her going on to say, "This is your chance to mean something, Bruce. You've got the talents that other kids don't have. And yes, while it's scary, dangerous, and new, you need to block all of that out and go straight for it." But even while hearing this, Bruce still tries to leave. And before he can, it seems like all of his other friends were there too, and eventually Bruce ends up staying. Staying while we see his mother there too in the theater, meaning all this was planned from the get-go. And cutting back over to the present day, we see his mother once more, Martha Wayne, alive, well, and in the flesh. And with Bruce one morning just deciding to drop in and check how his mother is doing, as while yes, she is alive here, they don't have the best and open of relationships. But Bruce came here to essentially tell his mother to just lay low. With all of the chaos and destruction going on in the city, he fears for her safety, especially with him being Batman and seeing just how brutal these party animals can be. But for that exact reason, the chaos is exactly why she can't just sit back, lie low, and do nothing. And in fact, she's stepping up as Jim Gordon's deputy mayor, which is the absolute last thing that Bruce wants to hear, because the party animals have explicitly been attacking politicians and officials. So in Bruce's eyes, this is pitting her directly in the line of fire, a bullseye, a target on her back. And here we see Bruce took a sip of the despair juice that's been going around. Because yes, while his mother is trying to help despite of the circumstances, Bruce Wayne says, "What if you can't? What if it's all just too big?" And her response is, "Well, you just try anyway. That's who we are. That's who I am, and that's who your father was." And Bruce simply responds, "Well, look how that turned out for him." But of course his mother is set in stone about what she has to do. And we even see Alfred reaffirming this as he goes on to narrate and explain to Bruce that no matter how brave you are, or skilled you are, or how right you might be, there's only one real thing you can do to keep your loved ones safe, and it's just to accept it. Accept that all of this is just too big, too much, that Batman is in over his head, and that looking up to the tallest of skyscrapers, there's so much he has to dismantle, and then looking down at his feet, there is still so much farther he could fall down. And in part, we see this directly playing out. We see the opposing party that is going against Commissioner Gordon, a man named Hill, and now how currently he has the backing of the police department, and even Black Mask, who is supporting him from the shadows. Because tomorrow marks the anniversary of one of the most violent days in the city history, the Gotham Zoo shooting. The same shooting that took Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne, from him. And now this year they're not going to do the memorial and whole service for them because of all the blood and chaos running through the streets. It would almost be a mockery. And with Batman knowing this and going over the deal that Black Mask has given him before, $200 million to stand down for 1 week. And if Batman accepts it, Black Mask promises, if you can even accept his word that is, that he is going to cut back a little bit, make things easier on old Gotham. As he goes on to further tempt Batman, saying think about all the good Batman could do with that kind of money. The cars, the weapons, the tech. He will become something larger than life, something epic. And with Batman and everyone around him essentially convincing him that he is in over his head, it's all too much. There's not much that Batman in his current form of what he is, especially without him already having the billions and resources and backing that Bruce Wayne usually does in most universes, he has had enough, as he decides to accept and take the deal, copying a plea from his greatest enemy so far. But knowing Batman, surely this isn't the end. Surely he has backup plans on backup plans and has thought this through. We see Bruce Wayne as a child in a courtroom, shortly after the murder of his father, Thomas Wayne. Now, a little preference and disclaimer, this comic does do a little bit of jumping off between past, present, and even a little bit of the future. So it is slightly hard to follow at times, but I'll break it all down. As I was saying here though, Bruce Wayne as a child is testifying after Joe Chill, the murderer of his father, just his father, not his parents, because his mother Martha Wayne is still alive and well within this absolute universe. But right before he is about to give his statement here, we then cut a little bit forward in time here. You see on some random rooftop in the middle of Gotham, we then see a group called the 10 Thieves do a little bit of extorting the good people of this neighborhood for protection, paying this gang here to protect them from essentially themselves. And with these people obviously not wanting to pay these thugs money, we see the 10 Thieves go to make an example of one of the people here, literally pushing her off of a building, which would have been certain death that these people here, these very violent criminals, could care less about. As the main guy goes on to say, see, if we don't stay vigilant, things could get real unpredictable and real fast. Who knows what can happen next? But to his absolute surprise, the woman returns back to the rooftop unharmed. And either one of two things happened. Somehow she has extraordinary abilities and she survived the fall and got to safety herself, or someone else intervened. Ding ding ding, turns out it's the second option, as you see Batman, one very early inside of his vigilante career, stalks these criminals from above, and he just saved the victim. And with that, he lunges down onto the group. Now, a couple things to note here. As you can tell, the art style is a little, well maybe not even a little, is a lot different than the previous art style from the other issues. Now yes, while some people might think this art style is ugly or doesn't fit and not as good as previously, I for one like it. It gives a different feeling to this whole flashback, if you will. It makes everything seem more daunting, scarier, almost like a fever dream, which I assume is exactly what Batman is going for, especially with this early in his career costume. And it's interesting because right now his gear is a little different too. Not only does he has this almost scarier bat-like costume, but he even has fangs that inject a toxin into the people's body, claws on his knuckles for slicing, and so on and so forth. Even still that iconic absolute Batman bulletproof cape. And eventually he is able to defeat the entire gang and even has the leader at gunpoint. And yes, while this absolute Batman is way more brutal than your normal Bruce Wayne, we don't know if he's a killer yet, if he has ever crossed that line, or if he is even willing to. But before we can see what happens with this battle, we move back in time once more to Bruce as a child, but this time not in a courtroom, no. At home, showing his genius off to his father, who at this point is still alive and well before the accident and tragedy at the Gotham Zoo. And another thing I like and really think is interesting here is seeing Bruce not only intelligent, but it as a young child, because usually he only really lets his intelligence shine later on after his parents are, taken out. He travels the world gathering knowledge, skills, whatever. But here, even from a young age, you can tell he's really gifted, which should just be a normal given because Bruce is like top 5, maybe not top 5, but comfortably top 10 smartest humans on DC. Because you have your Lex Luthors, your Mr. Terrifics, and a couple other possibly obscure characters I'm missing that are possibly smarter than him. But regardless, here we see Bruce has been engineering and building some type of bridge for a young engineers competition that his school is holding at the zoo this year. And for Bruce, he has specifically modeled it after a bat. Why? Well, because in his opinion, bats are super intimidating. So because of this, he made his bridge big and wide, scary and intimidating looking. And first his father is kind of just like, okay, well, why? Naturally, as you would, because for a bridge, why would you need it specifically intimidating? But the younger Bruce Wayne goes on to say, it makes people inside feel safe, protected, and it's strong. And at first his father doesn't fully understand it, Thomas Wayne, but later on we get more explanation in detail and he will soon get on board with it. But for now we move back over into the future where we see this younger Batman, this first prototype version of this absolute Batman and behemoth of a man he will become. Because while he is still on the roof fighting this gang, he has one of them at gunpoint. But before he can make any harsh and regrettable decisions, possibly even pulling the trigger and taking this person's life, suddenly more backup arrives and Batman is forced to flee, get out of there. And this whole encounter goes on to shape Batman, Bruce Wayne, into the vigilantean figure that he is now. Because he has a little bit of an inner monologue going on within his head, telling himself, this is all wrong. What are you even doing, Bruce? All of this is just theatrics. The face paint, the voice distorter, silicone fangs loaded with drugs that'll paralyze you. And this, a loaded gun? At the end of the day, these criminals, they're just street thugs. And they're desperate, meaning you scrape the 10 thieves, that group, that gang over there, you scrape them off the table and others just take their place. So frankly, it is just not enough. Batman needs to be more, needs to do more. Bruce needs to think bigger. He needs to build this Batman bigger, which is very intuitive for Bruce Wayne, this younger Batman, to get to the root of the problem. Sure, he can take on these street thugs all day, beat them up, wait for the cops to arrive and do their thing, but one, Gotham is a very corrupted city, meaning half of the time these criminals wouldn't even really face real justice and get out within the next day or two. And two, sure, the criminals are off the street, but the guns, the drugs, the actual activities themselves will still run rampant across Gotham unless Bruce can get to the bottom and source of it all. So he does exactly that, researching, putting together where exactly these shipment of guns and other illegal illegal substances are coming from. Specifically in this case, the pipeline of it all coming from Florida, where guns and drug laws are a little bit looser, with it shipping and hiding through produce trucks, and it all being siphoned through the head mafias of Gotham, the Falcones and Maranis. And this is where the big problems and the big bucks are. These crime families have entire operations, shifting the hot point each month to avoid raids. And even though they know that they are leaving a trail and the raids might come, they do it all in plain sight. And why not? They're not just street criminals, they have deals with at least a dozen official companies and at least 3 banks. An entire operation, with even Bruce saying himself, they are just too large to take down. But even if that may be the case, that doesn't mean Bruce can't try. He can't make a difference in his own way. As because we see a shipment of trucks leaving with these illegal substances, guns, drugs, whatever, Bruce still has to leave his mark. And that one way that can deter even the largest of operations: fear. Because we then see Batman deploy a little Batmobile RC car, zooming through, getting underneath the trucks. And as while these people are driving the trucks, doing their daily jobs within these gangs and mafias, suddenly, the main driver looks out and sees a bat figure stalking in the middle of the road, looking absolutely menacing. And at this point, nobody truly knows what Batman is. So yes, I'd imagine if you saw this armored figure on the road with a cowl and cape, at first you wouldn't even think it was a man. You would think it's either some type of creature, some type of entity. And so immediately they go to run him down, as you would driving a giant 18-wheeler truck. But Bruce is prepared, because remember that RC car from before? Well, he finally activates it as it shoots up some type of pillar, completely upheaving and completely destroying this truck. And the kicker is, all of this gear he has, this tech, he got it all for under $1,000. $1,000, meaning Batman, instead of spending time, effort, resources fighting the individual criminals, he's going after the big bucks, the main shipment, and making real change. Which even Bruce says this feels better. But these people, while hurt and not completely, beyond repair, they get out of the vehicle, looking for weapons and to confront what exactly just happened. Because from their perspective, they have done this hundreds of times before without trouble. Now, suddenly and randomly, this figured person comes and dismantles them within an instant. And even so, while they are getting out ready to handle what this person is, they're of course no match for this absolute Batman, as he now dismantles these people within seconds, taking out everyone with only a couple well-placed strikes, even going on to bang someone's head against a concrete wall. And here, Bruce has made a bigger change. Bigger change than just taking out this common street thugs on some random rooftop in Gotham. He is stopping suppliers, stopping people from getting their hands on weapons that will go on to take lives. But once more, we cut back in time, back to when Bruce was a child, talking over with his plans for this new bridge idea that he has with his father. And now with his father getting more into it, learning more, he is actually on board this time. And Thomas Wayne, his father, even going on to be proud of his son, encourage him to go down his line of thinking. But he only has one real hang-up. Because as when Bruce asks his father, do you think it's good enough to win this bridge, this invention? His father simply says, I don't know. But all that does matter is that you feel it's the best you can do. And that this invention here shows what's special about a bat at its core. But Bruce is kind of confused at this question, because he goes on to say, that's the thing. How do you know what anything is at its core? And so here Thomas Wayne, his father, goes on to tell a little bit of a story about his father, Bruce's grandfather. Specifically about how when Thomas Wayne was growing up, before Bruce was born, all he wanted to do was be a doctor, a heart surgeon specifically. Why? Because when he was a kid, his father died of a random heart attack. Just suddenly, it was like nothing, he just dropped dead. So because of that very traumatic incident of his life, he thought what he wanted to do was become a doctor, save other people from something that he couldn't save his father from going through. And then that's when he realized that yes, being a doctor would have been fulfilling and good, it just wasn't what Thomas wanted to do at his core. But as a teacher, the thing he is now in this universe, he can make other kids feel safe by preparing them for the world. So yes, he says maybe in some other life he is a doctor, which is just a reference to usually in the main DC continuity, Thomas Wayne is usually a doctor or something in the medical field along with running Wayne Enterprises. But in this life, teaching is what he really wants to do and accomplish at his core. And now in the next few panels, we see a double two-sided story being told. One, we still see a conversation between Bruce and his father, going over this project, this bridge that he has to build, and a new updated version that Bruce has now constructed. And in the other, we see an older Bruce, after getting over the trauma of his father, going on to travel the world and really search for what it is he wants to accomplish at his core. But as young Bruce goes on the monologue, I was thinking about the bridge, not the people, and that's where you start. You see, the people, they just want to live, to flourish. But the people, regardless if they're brave or not, they have to be worried about what's going to happen. As they look around and see things falling apart, whether it just be from natural occurrences in life or man-made, they're hurting and they feel like no one sees them. As we see, this older Bruce goes on to leave Gotham and just travel the world for a bit, traveling and really getting a sense of what the world is like, and what he, specifically Bruce Wayne, has to stand for. Because yes, he goes on to see all the injustices going on in the world. People feel like they're helpless, that there are forces beyond their control, powerless. Regardless though, eventually his travels lead him to, well, the answer that most Batmans do. bats, and how for his current problems and what he wants to solve in Gotham, and eventually, this vigilante Batman, this figure as a whole, we see everything tie back into this construction that Bruce was engineering. With him going on to tell his father with his 2.0 motto, he says, maybe in another time and place, a thing before would have been enough. But here in this place, at this moment, this bridge, this bat, needs to be everything plus more. Yes, it should be intimidating, but more than that, it should be scary. And it should be more adaptable than ever. It should map farther than before, roosting in all sorts of new places. As once again, we see exactly that. The process of young Bruce Wayne eventually becoming this young adult Batman, this absolute Batman, training, scouting, preparing for his new goal and mission. All of his tech skills, all bringing back to this one moment where he revealed his invention to his father. Because as he finally reveals it to his father, it is a pretty interesting but still Bat-related and inspired design. With Bruce even going on to say, it had everything the other designs had, but it has one extra feature. It flies. It's lightweight and foldable and easy to set up. It can be a tool for however people need it to. They don't have to rely on the powers that be to set it up. They can make this bridge theirs. They can use it for aid, for defense, or even offense, with it even having secret little buzz saws for those hard to reach places. In this idea of Bruce's engineering invention being for the everyday people, they don't have to rely on different governments or the powers that be to help them, even coincides with his revealings and findings as his younger Batman. Because as he is one day scouting this charity ball where a bunch of very influential and very rich and wealthy individuals go within Gotham, we see specifically Batman is here for a man named Randall Powers, the billionaire who owned the trucking company that the Falcones and the other mafias were using to import weapons. Obviously, with Gotham being as corrupt as he is, this billionaire was of course in it and making money from the shipments. And Batman here has a real disdain for the elitism in Gotham, because while these people are partying it up, having influence and resources, the rest of Gotham are corrupt and suffering, with of course these people here being all corrupt themselves in some way or fashion, even if it's just turning a blind eye to the suffering and not doing more with what they have. With Batman even making a vow now, a vow that he is going to come for these people and eventually bring all these corrupt politicians, influential people, the wealthy, the elite of Gotham to justice. But for now, as he is still in his early days, he has no relationship with the GCPD, as eventually they show up and Batman leaps off, getting ready to continue the plan to put into action of becoming this figure, this absolute Batman. But for now, we move back over to present day. Present day where we see Bruce in a very particular location, that of a prison where he meets the one person Bruce probably hates the most in life, and that is Joe Chill, his father's murderer. And no, this isn't because Bruce came here for revenge or to tell Joe off after all these years, but because Joe Chill had something to say, something to tell Bruce this time. But here we see him shortly after the attack that took his father's life, getting checked up by a doctor to make sure he's all good and doesn't have any rabies or anything from the bats, which of course he is fine, but there's one thing that the doctor says that sticks with Bruce. With her going on to say, yep, you're all good to go, but if you start growing fangs or pointy ears, you should call me right away. Otherwise, that should be the end of you and bats. Not knowing that this right here, this moment, is literally only the beginning, shaping young Bruce Wayne to become this absolute Batman that he will in the future. And yes, while he can't change the past and the events that happened, it's almost sad seeing this version of Batman and how his life turned out. Because sure, he has his mother who was still alive and only his father died, but unlike the main Batman and his counterpart, this version of Bruce, this absolute Batman, doesn't really have any sort of support. He has no other heroes that he knows of. He doesn't have the Bat family. He's never met Superman, the hopeful man that pushes him to go forward. He has no Dick Grayson, Nightwing. Heck, he literally just met his version of Alfred. They're acquaintances and tolerate each other at best. And even with the few little connections he has, Batman is going to lose them all. As because when we pick up in the midst and aftermath of what's going on, with Batman publicly accepting a Black Mask deal to not only lay low, but almost quit being Batman for $200 million. We see him rev through the streets going to meet the Black Mask himself. And all of the party animals and people of Gotham, the villains, they have strict orders not to touch Batman. So as he rides down Gotham, he's almost tempting them, trying to egg any of them on to attack. Give him any reason for the deal to blow up and be null and void. But nothing happens, and eventually he goes to the spot where he needs to be to meet this new figure. All while Alfred in the shadows watches and tracks everything. And even this, Alfred doesn't have to be here. If anything, his employer and the people he's working for tell him his job is done, he should leave. But he stays right where he is, watching this entire interaction unfold. And things aren't just looking down for Bruce or Batman in this situation, but even for the other goodwill individuals in Gotham, including his own mother and Commissioner Gordon, who at this point is running for mayor. But maybe that's not the right words, because essentially he just lost. Mayor Hill is coming up to almost sweep the competition and become mayor, but at the same time he is very corrupt. Whereas Gordon in his corner, of course, is trying to do the right thing. Even Bruce Wayne's mother, Martha Wayne, she has still the same good ideals and good heart as Bruce, except she's doing it in a totally different way, going more the normal and straight route, getting into politics and helping Jim Gordon go for mayor, to change the city the right way instead of this absolute Batman vigilante type of way. But Jim Gordon himself is almost so over it, so over all this corruption and losing, not being able to even see a full win in Gotham. which is a stark contrast to Martha Wayne's almost optimism and pushing through type of attitude, which is the same kind of attitude that her son, Bruce Wayne, adopts himself. Because as we move over to see him on the rooftop waiting for the arrival of the Black Mask, we finally see how things play out. And when I tell you things get really, really ugly, that is an understatement. As Alfred still watches from the shadows and goes on to further narrate, saying, "Here we go. A few more moments and this fever dream will be over. And this Batman will be something lasting, applicable, because he is getting hundreds of millions of dollars and will soon return from a vigilante within the city, scraping together what resources he can, to possibly using that money to make lasting impact and be something beyond just a normal hero." But even as Alfred watches, he senses something. For a moment, Batman's back tenses. It's almost imperceptible, but Alfred is able to catch it, meaning maybe Batman isn't as down or docile as he may seem. He is planning for something. But again, Alfred is really on track with Batman taking this deal now. Alfred has seen the world being an almost secret agent here, if you will, and not just a butler with some military background in the main DC universe. Alfred knows there's only so much a vigilante like Batman can realistically accomplish within Gotham, or even changing the world at large. But if you have goals like Batman does, and now you have hundreds of $1 million to complete them, you stand way more of a chance. But with the arrival of the Black Mask and his little posse, we finally see these two opposing forces. Batman, the self-proclaimed protector of Gotham, and Roman Sionis, the one man who has been destroying Gotham. Because as he goes on to say, so it's all set. $200 million. Completely anonymous, the code to the account was sent this morning. And Batman of course already knows this and says he used it on something big. Which $200 million, that's generational amount of money, generational wealth, that Batman could use in a plethora of different ways. To either try and boost his career as Batman, being 10 times more efficient, or even try to build up different avenues like open hospitals, foundations, etc. But as the Black Mask goes on to further ask, he says, "Okay, what did you spend it on? Cars, planes, bad computers? How much did you use? I just have to know." And the response of Batman is, "All of it. Every last dollar. Do you want to see how I spent it?" Pulling out a lever, pressing a button, as we see a giant bat symbol in the sky. This absolute Batman's bat symbol shining in the sky. And he is projecting the symbol into the night sky, using every penny of the $200 million he got from the Black Mask, slowly burning it just to send a message. No, he's not just gonna roll over, accept Black Mask blood money to become docile and almost out of the Black Mask way. What kind of message would that send to Gotham? Oh yes, your hero and protector can just be bought with a few $100 million and get out of the way. But no, this absolute Batman is confident in his abilities to change Gotham and potentially the world and get rid of this party animal group his own way. Which we will find out that, you know, maybe the absolute Batman isn't right all the time, but still, though hilariously as the giant symbol shines in the night sky, we see the Black Mask goes on to say that is one giant ugly bat. Which, you know, even though this bat symbol kind of does fit this absolute Batman, it is kind of ugly still. But here with this almost act of aggression, the deal is off. The party animals are free to attack, and vice versa with Batman. Batman is able to finally defend himself and take out these party animals, and Black Mask, who is finally here in the flesh. With him even going on to say and declare, "See, Roman, I don't need cars or planes or computers. I don't need anything you have. All I need is Batman." And instantly he starts whooping and beating all these party animals and the low-level soldiers, getting the upper hand and brutalizing them without mercy. And even we see the appearance of one of the big bads from last time, who Batman literally chopped his hand off, of course now wanting revenge on Batman. But even still here, he has sorely underestimated Batman as he jumps on his back, only to be impaled by the spikes on his costume, slowly letting him bleed out. Any physical resistance that these party animals are giving to Batman right now are almost non-existent. Batman is just pushing through and taking everybody out, with him even turning to the Black Mask himself, going on to say, all of the crime the party animals committed, all of the arsons, the robbery, the murders, it was all manufactured by you, so you and your boss could profit. You don't care how many people die, which of course he doesn't. In this instance, the Black Mask is almost unredeemable, with him even confirming, saying no, but fortunately you do, as he orders some of the other party animals to just start opening fire, killing everyone and other party animals alike, all just to capture and get Batman down, which eventually they are able to do. Batman is overwhelmed. There's just too many people as multiple ropes firing out, momentarily holding him and capturing him. With the Black Mask watching Batman struggle against his restraints, almost being disappointed in him, saying, "Man, you had it all too. All right there, the ticket to the big party, and all you had to do was reach out and grab it." Which Batman, taking these last words to heart, reaches out physically to try and grab the Black Mask. Which of course doesn't go well for him, as the Black Mask, being stronger than he looks, grabs and twists Batman's arm, breaking it from the hilt. With him furthering pushing the idea that Batman could have had it all, but now in the position he's in, what does he have now? Which Batman just goes on to say, with a smile on his face, "I have just what I wanted. Everything that you have said up here on this rooftop, everything that you have confessed to, it's already at every news station in Gotham, as Batman has sneaked in a secret recorder recording this entire interaction." which maybe if this was any other villain that actually cared about their appearance, yes, this could potentially work. But here with Roman Sionis, the Black Mask, he's almost too corrupt, too far gone, that literally he just doesn't care. With him going on to taunt Batman saying, you actually think you achieved something here, don't you? You really believe that burning the cache, exposing the quote-unquote truth, is going to inspire them, the citizens of Gotham? You really think you're the hero? You know, I hate to tell you, pal, but you're not even the main character. While all this is being explained to Batman and the $200 million are slowly burning away in the background, Batman is also being brutally stabbed and tortured while being captured, bleeding out on this random rooftop in Gotham. And it gets worse as someone pulls out a flamethrower burning Batman. But you know, Batman is built like a brick house. Physically, he is a beast, but still he is only human. And as a human, he has limits, one that he is pretty much approaching now. But the Black Mask goes on to further say, the only hero of the story, Batman, is money, which will coincide with his plan later on, basically showing that yes, Black Mask is so powerful, so bored with life, and just has too much money. He is corrupted through and through. He knows just how much money could change a person. The average citizens of Gotham who would never think of doing crime or picking up or working for someone like the Black Mask and the Party Animals, all they really need is one push and a powerful motivator: money. With Batman still just being beat in the background and eventually knocked off of the roof, falling down onto the city of Gotham below. But thankfully his tattered and broken cape, being the worst parachute I've ever seen, slows his fall even if barely before he crashes down on a car. And to make matters even worse, we see the GCPD actually has eyes on Batman, all who themselves wouldn't really care if Batman were to live another day, as they open fire, blowing him up, hurting him even further, but he is able to get on the move. Limping away, barely able to stand up and conscious, as again it doesn't get any easier for Batman, as a lone officer spots him in the dark and hits him with her car at full force. And as he is able to just barely crawl into the sewer, opening a manhole cover, the officer gets out, aiming her weapon at Batman, telling him to stop. But Batman at this point, who has just dealt with his most devastating loss yet, just keeps moving, telling her if you're going to shoot, then just do it, go ahead. But here, as we find out that this officer here isn't just any random no-name officer, this is the daughter of Jim Gordon herself, Barbara Gordon, who of course later goes on to be Batgirl in the main DC universe, but here we see that she is no different, as in, she still has goodwill and a good heart as she puts down her gun and just lets him leave. And of course, when over the radio, the other officers ask her if there's any sign of Batman, she just says no, none. But Batman leaving his cowl behind, this obviously is foreshadowing that yes, maybe this Barbara Gordon here will go the same path and track Batman down, maybe even becoming his first partner against crime, the Batgirl. And with Batman barely escaping, barely getting away within an inch of his life, we see how the Black Mask is handling all of this right now. Because yes, before this entire thing was being live streamed to every news network, which is good if Batman's plan would have worked, exposing to the citizens of Gotham the Black Mask's corruption and just how bad he is. But instead, Batman has just inadvertently given his biggest enemy so far the biggest platform to again every news network on Gotham, meaning everyone is watching. As he goes on to tell the people of Gotham a little story, a story of how he used to grow up on a pig farm, humble beginnings, and one of the jobs on the farm was to kill the pigs when the time came. And to do it, he used one of those bolt pistols, a 5-inch nail right in the head. It was just one shot, thunk, and the pig was down. But once in a while, in rare occasions, the pig will have a spasm. No, not of pain, but of joy. And he only learned later in life that this only happened when the pin got deep enough into his tiny little brain to hit a specific spot, the main pleasure center, and this could only occur if the pig didn't tense up. When the pain hit, the pig just relaxed and accepted it, which seems pretty random at first, but he brings it all back saying, we can all feel it. The big guys, they killed the world a long time ago, and yet they keep us all here slaving away with the promise that it's still alive. I mean, think about it, you can barely pay your bills while their money makes money. You drag recycling bins to the curb while they ride private jets that tear the sky apart. You struggle to hold this system together that does nothing for you, doing the right thing so they can do the wrong one. And with this, the Black Mask just has one question. Why? Why be a good guy doing the right thing? The people at the top, the more successful people are all doing the wrong things. Why be a moral person like Batman, who throughout his life has endured nothing but pain and struggle for the most part, whereas you can be someone like the Black Mask, who is morally corrupt and bad, but he is very successful with all the money and power he could want, living a life where he can do anything he wants to anybody. Obviously using this platform he has now to play on the moral heartstrings of everyone in Gotham. Which, moving back over to Bruce Wayne, we see him at one of his little secret hideouts that he has throughout Gotham, slowly patching himself up from the brutal torture and battle he just endured. It is almost sad to see Bruce in this state, so down and defeated, barely pulling himself together, knowing that there's an entire force, an army he has to go after, while Bruce is just in his little cave, licking his wounds, barely staying alive to see another day. But even while he is doing this, stitching himself back up, he feels a pair of eyes on him, and it is none other than Alfred, who has come to track him down. After witnessing everything that Batman has done tonight, he goes to give him a little piece of his mind, telling him, do you have any idea what you've done? And at first, Batman just answers the question saying yes, he tagged him with the tracer from the bike. He slipped it onto Black Mask's clothes when he grabbed him. So for now, Alfred, come help me close some of these wounds and I can. But Alfred just cuts him off, telling him to go to a not so good place, because at this point, Alfred is just so done with Batman, even going on to say, I used to be a field medic. I know about 100 ways to patch you up and help you heal, but I will never help you again. Goodbye, kid. And just know what's coming next is on your head, which is very sad to see. Batman is losing everything, almost of course down to his life previously to most of his connections. Alfred himself, who, he didn't really have that good of a relationship with here, still seems like he's gone and out of Batman's life. Bruce is back to being a solo act with no support. And with Batman having no support now, we move back over to see the Black Mask in this party animal group gain more support. Because as he goes on to further say and further try to manipulate and corrupt everyone listening, all of those ideals, those dreams you're tolling for are dead. Progress is dead, history is dead, and truth is dead. So how about we all just admit it's dead and relax? Let's all live in that one split second of ecstasy and feast on the giant scraps. And because Batman turned down his invitation, I'm offering invitations to all of you. Hundreds of millions of dollars all up for grabs. As we see what is truly happening in the Black Mask's plan, he has left crates all over the city for the tens of thousands of people within Gotham to see and grab. Crates full of weapons, instructions, and party animal mask. He is offering an invitation to everyone, no matter who or what, to join his group, join in the ideals, and even offering hundreds of millions of dollars to go with it. Telling the people of Gotham, welcome to the party animals. As you know just how bad of a city Gotham is, there is a plethora of people who would drop everything in a heartbeat to pursue and be a party animal. Which at this devastating revelation, Batman is at his lowest, whereas the party animals are almost at their highest, gaining even more footholding within a city. But for now, we see Bruce Wayne probably at his lowest point than he has ever been, excluding maybe the immediate death of his father, sending him down this path as Batman in the first place. Regardless though, with him being beaten up and having no allies so far, with Alfred literally leaving him, he goes to some of his most trusted childhood friends, who in the main universe are some of his most notorious villains, in this case being Waylon Jones, the Killer Croc. And that's not even the most insane part. The craziest part is, he finally reveals his identity, telling Waylon that he is Batman and he needs his help. Which yeah, it's a very desperate situation if Batman is forced to give up his giant trump card, his weakness, his identity of who he is, that he is Batman, and now that they know that he is Bruce Wayne, that inadvertently puts his mother, Martha Wayne, in harm's way. And much like some of the other issues, his flashbacks are woven all throughout the story, telling Bruce Wayne's origin in a more subtle way, as we see here young Bruce Wayne as a child having a sleepover with some of those aforementioned childhood friends, who later each respectively become some of his most iconic villains in the main universe, such as Harvey Dent, Two-Face, Waylon Jones, the Croc, Edward Nygma, the Riddler, even here Selina Kyle, the Catwoman. But here it seems like this is all just a dream, or more accurately a nightmare, as we see his mother Martha get shot in the same fashion that his father Thomas did, and no, not in some crime alley like the normal Batman would, but at a zoo protecting the lives of other children. Instead, at least this version of Bruce Wayne, this absolute Batman, still has his mother, which alone just puts him down a different path with some of the other Batmans. So here growing up, instead of just being entrusted to his butler Alfred and making his own way, he had some actual parental guidance, as we will be brought back to this specific moment throughout this entire comic and what transpires. For now though, we move back in real time to where Martha is now. And yeah, she isn't in a very safe or ideal situation, because the Black Mask has sent the city into chaos, leaving around crates full of not only dangerous weapons, but the party animal mask, which offers a high-tech network, essentially making life into a video game, where the prize is money, and except having fun, the only way to earn the prize is by committing crimes, starting with $50,000 for robbery up until $250,000 for straight up murder. And of course, yeah, knowing Gotham and just how corrupt not only some of the people but the higher ups are, there are going to be hundreds of people just waiting to jump in on a deal like this and spread chaos, especially if afterwards they can be getting paid and live better than they did before. The worst part is, they are here surrounded by other people picking up the crates and weapons, and as it will turn out, Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne are both high value targets, their death equaling to about $1 million each. So yeah, they have a pretty high value target on their back, and it's accessible to almost every citizen in Gotham. And speaking of Gotham, we go to jump around to a couple of its citizens. Firstly, we start and see a very interesting woman who frankly doesn't get a lot of attention in the Batman mythos, and this woman being literally the daughter of Alfred, who is relatively new and also relatively forgotten in the comic space, but here in the Absolute Universe, her direction here is very different than the little we have seen before, because as she is here on the train getting an emergency alert that is going citywide for everybody to stay inside and be wary of the new party animal threatening to consume the city whole, she unfortunately isn't safe, as immediately things go wrong as she is instantly grabbed by some of the party animals, or so it seems. Because as she is grabbed and, well, kidnapped away, we find out that everything isn't as it seems, because cutting over to an airfield, we see it was all just a giant lie. The entire time, it was just Alfred himself, under the disguise of a party animal, to get his daughter out of harm's way, out of the city. But from a very interesting departure from Alfred being almost another father figure to Bruce Wayne, it seems like here Alfred hasn't been the best of a parent to his daughter, but his reasoning reasoning for kidnapping her, trying to take her away is essentially, Gotham is very quickly turning into a hellhole. So as he says, I'll bring you back to Gotham in a few weeks when it's safe. I have seen the aftermath in places where Black Mask does this kind of things. And right now I just cannot risk you being here. But his daughter, Julia, just doesn't care and doesn't want to hear what he has to say. Her reasoning being that she has a life and she has people here in Gotham that she cares about. And how growing up, while Alfred was off being a super spy for whatever organization traveling all across the world, these different adventures, she essentially felt abandoned, waiting all day at home for her father to come back, wanting herself to go on some of these grand adventures with him. But now, in the present, there is no place that she would want to be less on than a plane with him, even going on to threaten, saying, I promise you this, if we take off, I don't have a father anymore. But regardless of the personal jeopardy of his relationship with his daughter, his child, her safety and well-being takes precedent over that, as eventually they take off. Which at this point, it seems like Alfred just straight up just gives up on Gotham, letting it either crumble or survive on its own affairs and the players within it. And speaking of the players, we move over and see Gotham's only real hope, this absolute Batman and his endeavors, as he is now back on his feet. Or I guess more accurately, he is up in the air, as he is flying with another one of his friends, the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, who again, he had to reveal his secret identity that he's now Batman. And here we see Oswald, and by extension the rest of his friends, not really taking it too well, with him even going on to say, well, now that the cat is out of the bag, Waylon wants to punch you, and Harvey wants to arrest you. Edward Nygma, the Riddler, says he already guessed it weeks ago. And who even knows what Selina would think about it, which she would probably just find it hot. Which is interesting that up until now we haven't seen where she even is in the present. Regardless, right now Bruce has way more pressing matters, as his mission here, locating the servers on the boat down below to this whole party animal network, could potentially mean the destruction and utter chaos of Gotham, or saving it for it to see another day. Him even going on to hypothesize, saying that Edward Nygma's Riddler program said Black Mask's entire network is too big to bring down, but the local servers could be crashed, and that there has to be one on that boat down below. If he can just blow it up, he can end this all. But unfortunately, this seems to be a one-way trip, as because his ride here in this little plane, there is barely enough fuel for them to even make it back to Gotham as it is right here. As Oswald, as he flies, says, I can't stick around to save you. But Batman, knowing this and ready to put his life down on the line if it meant saving his precious city Gotham, says he's not asking him to, or anyone else for that matter, with him jumping out in an incredibly cool shot very reminiscent of The Dark Knight Returns. Batman drops down, descending very fast to enact his final and realistically most important mission so far. And everybody on this boat now, Black Mask and his forces, are just chilling, they think they have won. The entire city is in chaos. There's going to be a whole new plethora of new party animal members to further whatever chaos and goals that the Black Mask has. But little do they know, everything is going to get flipped on his head as Batman, Bruce Wayne, this absolute behemoth of a character, just comes dropping down on the DJ here. And let me tell you, I would rather face normal Batman 10 times over than have this 7'5", 500-pound behemoth of a muscle wall just descend and break every bone in my body. Like, yeah, I'm just good on that. And even as you will see, this Batman is not playing around, because if there's one thing about Batman, he's really like the Avenger. Because yes, as much as Batman plans, prepares for every threat or what could happen, Batman works best when he already gets beaten, when he already gets doubted out, and then he comes back twice as hard, coming back to not only avenge himself, but whatever villain has wronged or done wrong. And here Batman went from 0 to 110 in a matter of seconds, as even the children aren't safe. Because as one of the kids come rushing in ready to attack Batman with a knife, he effortlessly just grabs and holds the child up before wrapping him and punting the little child away like he was nothing more than a football. So yeah, you can already tell this Batman is not playing around. And even as the woman here, the mother I assume, or whatever, comes out seeing that everybody is gone and Batman is only here, with an absolutely deranged and devious look in his eyes, yeah, she does the smartest thing anyone has ever done so far in this comic, and just surrenders, jumping overboard herself, before she gets beaten to a pulp by Batman. But for what it's worth, Batman still sticks true to his morals. He isn't just gonna leave him there to tire out and eventually drown, he's giving everybody a lifeboat so they can at least survive. And just like that, we cut back over into the past during a flashback with Bruce and his mother. Just after Bruce having his nightmare, they decide to lighten the mood and go down memory lane, looking at some pictures in an old picture book. And everything is all fine and dandy until they land on one specific picture. A picture of Bruce and his class, all of his childhood friends. But it seems like this picture here is one that gives Bruce a little pause, because this specific instance was taken right before the shooting, right before the death and murder of his father, Thomas Wayne, at their trip to the Gotham Zoo. And once again, Martha in the present time, things aren't going the best, as she is literally being held at gunpoint by some of the other citizens of Gotham wearing the party animal mask, looking in to cash in on the $1 million bounty on her and Jim Gordon's head. But it seems like these people aren't just hardened criminals ready to pull the trigger and murder somebody. They're just the disprivileged citizens of Gotham who have been dealt a bad hand in life, looking for an easy way out. And speaking of easy way out, that is something that the Black Mask himself isn't going to get, as we finally see Roman Sionis's and Batman's rematch, back on the ship here as they finally come to blows. But as you will see here, things are very much different. Batman instantly gets the upper hand. But even as they are fighting, the Black Mask almost thinks all of this is pointless, with him going on to say, "You still don't get it. Do you think you can really stop this?" Stop them. You think you can stop anything that is coming, which is very interesting because it almost seems like he is alluding that no matter what he is doing with the party animals, there are greater forces at work, much greater and bigger forces that even the Black Mask is scared of. Regardless though, Batman is just completely out of his mind here, set on this one goal, to almost a crazy and psychotic way, as he just continues the fight, going on to bulldoze and run down on the Black Mask, telling him to go on and keep talking while smashing his head in with bowling balls. Bruce continuing saying, "Tell me again how I don't matter. I love it." Busting through different floors and rooms, just wailing on the Black Mask. But in the middle of Batman's blind rage and fury, not even realizing what's going on, he suddenly finds himself in a trap as Roman Sionis is able to get his hands on a little bit of razor wire, wrapping it around Batman's neck and pulling, as it starts to choke Batman, cutting into his very skin, making him bleed. And here, while being one step away from death's door, with him bleeding out in a couple minutes from being completely decapitated, a couple things go on to happen. Firstly, we see Batman himself going to almost reminisce, think back to the memories with him and his mother on that couch one evening. Martha Wayne in his moment going on to say, "Being hopeful is not easy." But that's what I see when I look at these pictures. Because no matter how hard things got, and believe me, they were rough sometimes, you're hopeful. But he was always at his most hopeful about you, Bruce, which is like the little motivation Batman needs to push through his neck literally being sliced into and under the Black Mask's control. And even here in the moment, Roman goes on to say and reference back to when he was making his speech in the other issue about the pig and him working on the farm and whatever. He says, "You know, I lied about the pigs. My favorite part wasn't when they loved it. Nah, the best part is when they fought. When they struggled up right until the end. They never believed that the bolt would come to end them, to kill them, when they thought they could win. The scream they made at the end, that shriek was the best sound in the entire world." But in this moment, Batman only has 6 words for him. Did it sound anything like this? As the mechanical bat ears on his cowl start to shift and shake. Because before we've seen that they can become undone and turn into knives. Here instead they turn forward, making a certain mechanical sound in the shape of bullhorns. And you know it's bad when Batman pulls this out because this essentially has no other purpose than stabbing someone and being very destructive. As we literally see that here, him jamming his head forward, stabbing the talons into the Black Mask head, straight into his eyes, which I for one don't know how he even survived this, or how Batman in the moment didn't think he was gonna kill him with this. But maybe that's the thing, maybe in the moment Batman just didn't care. Maybe he took an educated guess. Regardless though, no, it doesn't kill him. In the end, it only seems to really blind him and take him out of the fight permanently. Black Mask now just realizing how crazy Batman is and a force to be reckoned with. As he goes on to say, "You're a lunatic. You will lose everything, everyone you love. I promise you, you have no idea what you've started." And very funnily enough, Batman just tosses him overboard. But in this case, he doesn't throw a life jacket over too. Which I don't know if the Black Mask is even in any condition to swim, or even if that giant helmet, head of his, whatever, can even float. Maybe he just sank down to the bottom. It's not really confirmed, but I could put money on us not seeing the end of Roman Sionis. But this is it. This is everything Bruce has been fighting for with this new animal party threat invading Gotham. This is the end game. As he finally makes his way to the local servers on board the ship, knowing that this was a one-way mission. He has no ride, no way to get back to Gotham. Potentially he could maybe swim the way, but being as heavy as he is and as tired as he is, even that is a giant question mark. For now, Batman pulls out the explosives he brought with him and blows the entire ship up. The servers on board finally destroyed with himself still on the ship. And just like that, moving back over to Gotham, we actually see it was successful. The criminals, the wannabe party animals from before who had Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne at gunpoint now, suddenly realize it stopped working. Their targets, the mask, it's all at $0, meaning even if they kill them now, it would be for nothing. The party animals as they were before, it's all over. And yeah, like I said before, these people aren't just hardened criminals ready to kill someone at the drop of a hat. They were ready to do it for probably one of the most motivating things in the world for a lot of people, money. With one of the armed men even going on to say, "Wait, so does that mean there's no more money?" In which Martha Wayne responds by punching him across the face, as he would of course after being held at gunpoint by the same person. But as we see what happened to Batman, him floating endlessly through the ocean, after blowing up and is unconscious now, this would have been it. Batman had no way to even get back home. He's too hurt, too damaged to make it out himself. Fortunately though, in life, it seems like when you do good and put out good, good will also come back to you. Because as we see, Alfred finally arrived back in Gotham, back here to finally help Batman, deciding against the wishes of the organization that he was working for, to instead help Bruce on his mission to bettering Gotham. With him saying, "If I'm sticking around, so are you, so now let's get you all patched up." Which is pretty cool to see. Alfred now seemingly going to stay in Gotham, so him and Bruce are going to become the tag team that they usually are, in whatever form or fashion this absolute universe takes them in. Which, yeah, it seems like the day is saved. The party animals is no more. Black Mask has been defeated. Batman, you know, as hurt as he is, he has new allies here to stay permanently. Unfortunately, though, things are going to get absolutely worse for Gotham. As when we move over to the epilogue, we are met with a pretty gruesome sight. The Joker, or he is before he becomes this universe's version of it. Him looking absolutely bony and very tweaked out, surrounded by some sort of fleshy and baby looking material. Slowly gaining his strength back, absorbing the life force of whatever these creatures are on top of him are, and turning himself back into human, as his assistant or man goes on to tell him that essentially the Black Mask has failed. His plan for Gotham and taking it over with the party animals has been dismantled, but the Joker here is seemingly very calm and simply says, "I'm aware. It's time. Go get Bane." So yes, it seems like Gotham isn't out of hot water just yet. This was only the beginning of Batman's troubles, as whatever form or fashion, Bane is going to show up and wreak even more havoc upon Batman's life, in which, if you've seen how big Absolute Batman is, I can only imagine how ginormous Absolute Bane is going to be. But yeah, that is it. That is the first real arc, the first 6 issues of this new Absolute Batman series, simply named The Zoo. And even though this is the end of the first arc, it seems like things are going to be heating up very rapidly and very fast. And I, for one, really enjoyed this first 6 issues. You know, a lot of things were very similar in the way that Batman acts and his whole situation and deal with Gotham, but at the same time, a lot of things were very different. His mother being alive, for one, his relationship with Alfred and some of the other villains, or I guess now friends of his, and even the entire situation with Joker, very mysterious stuff. Ones that we're going to get answer for in later issues, as this one, in this video, comes to a close. If you have enjoyed, leave a like, or subscribe if you're new here and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was AJ here at the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.